The clock is at 0, and another Cougar football game is in the books.
Punt by Jack Burgess. Much better. It's a mouth down there. Scramble for the football and an early turnover. Kingston retreated, lost the ball, and Hampton falls on it. Final 30 seconds of the quarter. Second down throw to the end zone. Douglas. Touchdown, Texas Tech. What a drive. Refs deliver a knockout from the pocket. Incomplete. It was broken up. Terrence Carter was the intended receiver. Look how fired up Satake is. And that defense getting after Bachmeier, who escapes and throws an interception. Picked off by Rodriguez and J-Rod, as they call him, trying to make him a Heisman candidate around here. 6 offensive linemen. Power! And walking in is Cameron Dickey. Texas Tech making a statement in front of the nation today. Meyer flips to the end zone and touchdown. Catch made by Chase Roberts.
Now it's time to break down all the action. You're listening to the Cougar Postgame Show on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
It's your Cougar Post-Game Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. I'm Christian Esparza, Alex Napoles with me to break down this BYU loss. Alex, the Cougars are undefeated no more. It's the first loss of the season for BYU, obviously falling on the road 29-7 against Texas Tech in a top 10 matchup. First top 10 matchup ever for Cougs. Doesn't go their way. Tough loss, but I wouldn't say unexpected. We knew it was going to be a tough game there in Lubbock, even with the Cougars coming off of a bye. And man, I don't know what it was, just weren't ready for the game, didn't wake up for it, but it was tough sledding right from the get-go for BYU.
It's the early kick, and you know, I think before we really dive into it and before we really break it down, I do think that despite everything, there is some kudos and some credit to be given to that BYU defense. Their performance in the red zone today, I think, really kept them in this game. Obviously,
yeah.
I thought defensively, there was still a lot of positives and a lot of good things that BYU can take away from this game. But at the end of the day, what matters is the 29-7, and BYU will come back to Provo with their first loss of the year, man.
Yeah, the red zone defense really held up for BYU. Obviously, that game was still within reach, technically 2 scores, really until the fourth quarter, end of the third quarter, I guess, for BYU. And it did seem like the defense came to play today. The offense really is where they struggled. And, I mean, we got to start with the beginning of the game, right? This thing went downhill right from the get-go. BYU started with the ball, and right from that first punt, shanked off the leg of Vander Haar, and then you had some more special teams miscues, right? You had the dropped punt by Kingston, and then a missed field goal by Will Farron. All of that happened in like the first half of the first quarter. And with all of that compounding, BYU found themselves in a 2-score hole early. They were down 10-0 really quick. And I said this morning, I said, if BYU goes down 2 scores, this game is over, because you're not going to come back against this Texas Tech team. There's no way. BYU just simply is not built for that. And this Texas Tech team was too good. The environment was rocking, right? The stadium was going crazy there. And it was a really tough place for BYU to be in. And unfortunately for them, they made their mistakes early, and they were killer.
They were. And I think, you know, you go back and to the start of the game, to those special team plays specifically, Christian, that you're talking about. And I think that really made a big difference. That really made a big difference, because you give Texas Tech short field. Again, credit to that defense for holding them to just that field goal after that muff punt from Parker Kingston. But the reality is that kind of made the difference in that first half. Aside too from BYU's inability to move the ball really against that Texas Tech defense.
Yeah, I mean, imagine how different this game would have been, right? If BYU would have got that first punt and then even got a field goal on that first drive, and BYU would have led 3-0 instead of Texas Tech getting on the board first. But the momentum thing is a real factor. And we saw it last week with BYU at Iowa State when they 2 weeks ago, when they punted and recovered the ball on the punt, that like reignites everybody. And I think that BYU's, again, to point to the defense, I think they did a great job. The linebackers did a great job today of getting to Baron Morton and really pressuring him, throwing him off his game. He didn't play that well today, and frankly, he didn't have to. But the offense today for BYU did not show up, and I think that's where we got to focus. Obviously, scrolling through social media, the Fire A-Rod thing is picking up steam. Surprised. I'd be surprised if it wasn't trending by the end of the day, on the top 10 things on Twitter. As soon as BYU loses, that's what they love to point to is Fire A-Rod, Fire A-Rod. And I want to say I don't think he called a perfect game by any means, especially with the bye week. I would say that he probably disappointed a little bit with his play calling, but to put this loss on the shoulders of Aaron Roderick, I think is a lazy take. And I think that, it's maybe refusing to accept that some of your big time players on offense just did not show up today.
Yeah. That, and I think it doesn't give enough credit to Shill Wood, the defensive coordinator for Texas Tech, who I think in contrast to Aaron Roderick in that BYU offense, right, he called a really great game. He brought the house and he brought the pressure at really good times. He really had Bear Bachmeier frazzled, and yeah. I think we haven't really seen Bear Bachmeier frazzled throughout the course of the season, but today it was apparent that they had him with some happy feet in the pocket, man. They had him questioning some decisions. They had him making quick decisions, and credit to that Texas Tech defense, man. We talked about it this morning. We talked about how great they've been all season. They are one of the top defenses in the entire nation, and they showed it tonight. They showed it today against BYU. They really made Bear Bachmeier struggle. And of course, you end the first half with, I think it was 108 yards just in that first half for BYU, which is it wasn't good. The offense really struggled to find answers against that Texas Tech defense.
Yeah, and I mean, Jacob Rodriguez is the real deal. David Bailey was the real deal.
Yeah.
I think those two players, I don't want to say single-handedly, but because the rest of that defense is great top to bottom, but having those two players is going to make any defense good, right? And they were making plays, that interception that Rodriguez had, and then he did finish with a fumble recovery as well. So he had 2 takeaways, and he was already leading the country in takeaways coming into this game. David Bailey did his thing, blowing up some read options in the backfield and getting after Bear. So it's a tough loss for BYU. I think that they are glad they got points on the board, right? They didn't get blanked. I think if at the end of the season, the College Football Playoff Committee is doing their thing and just scoreboard checking throughout the year, and how did this team perform? Oh, there's a bagel next to their name against a top 10 team.
Yeah,
they're not making the playoffs. So
that would hurt.
That would hurt. And I mean, it still is a lopsided game, and it was on national TV, so there were a lot of people watching. But to get points on the board, I think ultimately is going to keep BYU's college football playoff hopes alive. And then, of course, if they win out the rest of the year and still finish the season with only 1 loss, and who knows what happens in a potential Big 12 championship game, then that can further solidify yourself too, right? But today, we've seen it a couple times this season where the national spotlight is on a local team, and it just don't show up, man.
Wouldn't be the first time against Texas Tech too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. And again, credit to that defense. You look at LJ Martin, and they really couldn't get him going in the running game. 10 carries for 35 yards. Anytime Bear Bachmeier would pull the ball and try to run, he would also get stopped short or get stopped quickly. Only had 12 yards in this one. There was a couple of throws where, specifically thinking about the one downfield that Chase Roberts has to dive for. Probably should have come down with that ball. Doesn't, falls incomplete. There was a couple of big plays that I think BYU left on the table due to not being able to get the running game going, due to not being able to catch the ball downfield.
Yeah, and drops too. There was that one that went right through JoJo Phillips' hands, and that's the thing. Like, how many times they tell you, man, go out and attack the ball with your hands. Don't let it come to you. Like, look, I never played wide receiver, but it is frustrating to watch them try and catch it with their body, and it goes right through. And in a game like this, where every single mistake is put under a microscope, they stick out in your mind. And it's like, I'm thinking of JoJo's face, like after that play, like he could tell, oh, that was big.
Yes.
And it's things like that separated, I guess, the two teams today. You got the one team that played a really clean game. They didn't really make those type of mistakes. And then on the other side, it was BYU. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 or 3 mistakes. It was all over.
But you know what, man? Even when Texas Tech did make those mistakes, even when it did happen, like there was right before the half, there was that drive where Texas Tech again gets into the red zone. And I want to say it was a slant route that the wide receiver couldn't rally in and couldn't bring in for the touchdown late, right? Even when those happened, you still had points, right? You still took the points because of the field goals, right? The kicker goes 5 for 5. Again, credit to the BYU defense for holding, but ultimately BYU wasn't in a position where they could take points, right? They get into field goal range. They take the field goal, the 51-yarder from Will Ferrin. That's no good. But I mean, aside from that, BYU really didn't get the ball into Texas Tech territory. They didn't have those opportunities to make plays, to get field goals, right, to take some points, whereas Texas Tech did. They drove the ball down the field. They got into the red zone, stalled out, but they still took the points. And I think ultimately, obviously, that makes a huge difference because you're down going into the half and you have a goose egg going into the half.
Yeah, you look at the drive chart. In the first half, they had, the first drive of the game was 5 plays. Then the next drive was 8 plays, and they still ended up punting. Then the missed field goal drive was 9 plays. And then they had a 7-play drive and a 3-play drive. In the second half, just short drives. Couldn't do anything. 5 plays, 3 plays, 6 plays, 8 plays, 4 plays, 2, and then 6. So I think in the first half, those were when they had their chances. And obviously the missed field goal is going to stand out because that was an opportunity there. But then there were other times too where, just missed assignments, drop catches, and things like that. And then they keep stacking and building.
Yeah.
And it's just snowballing, right? And it's just snowballing and getting worse and worse for this team. And then you get to halftime and you're like, okay, what adjustments can we make? And frankly, in the second half, it didn't look any better, to be honest with you. So again, that's like, I guess maybe that's where people are pointing to Aaron Roderick or something, but I don't think it was all on one player. I don't think it was all on one coach. I think it was really just collectively the offense and special teams, especially today, couldn't do anything. And that's frustrating for the defense. Like you're pointing out, Alex, they did a tremendous job of holding Tech to field goals today. And of course, things opened up later on in the game where BYU's defense was finally breaking and not just bending, but there were so many times where Texas Tech got to the red zone or almost into the red zone, and they were either sacked and knocked out of the red zone or had to settle for a field goal. And when you're a defensive player, you hope that, okay, we got the stop now. Our offense can pick up the slack and go put some points on the board. And then when that continues to not happen, it's like, okay, what's the point, man? What are we doing out here?
Yeah. And I think ultimately too at the line of scrimmage, right? I think there was a couple of big pushes from that BYU offensive line early that it seemed like LJ Martin was going to be able to get something going, but then ultimately too, you just lose the battle at the line of scrimmage. That defensive line, we learned it against Utah, how good they are, how great they are. They continue to show that again today against BYU. That defensive line is an immovable wall, and losing that battle at the line of scrimmage, obviously, it obviously takes a toll, right? Because you're unable to run the ball. And then two, there was a couple times where Bear Bachmeier just had no time to make a decision, to get a ball really going downfield, and the pressure was in his face. Bailey didn't get the sack today, man, but still did a great job of disrupting Bear Bachmeier in the pocket.
Yeah, he was all over. He was all over, forcing Bear to run around and make quick decisions. And I think this was the first game of the year where Bear, to use the cliche, looked like a true freshman. And he was just flustered. He was flustered, and Tech did a great job of knowing how to pressure him and get after him. And we knew the run game wasn't going to be a factor today. I mean, the hope was that they could get something going with LJ Martin in the lineup, but we knew, we talked this morning about it. We knew that, look, that's a hope. That's not a given. It was going to be a long shot for BYU to move the ball on the ground today. And we knew it was going to have to come down to Bear Bachmeier and his arm, and couldn't get it done. couldn't get it done. And we looked at looking at the third down efficiency, man. 3 of 14 for BYU today, 1 of 3 on fourth down. And you're facing so many third and longs, and it's like, a lot of those passes, dude, seemed like they were just ahead, just outside of the receiver's hands or dropped. And it's just one of those frustrating days where everything was going against them.
I think the third down efficiency is 3 to 14 isn't it's not going to win you games. But more so too, it just felt like they were always in long situations, and Texas Tech defense was prepared for those long situations. Whether it was quickly rushing forward, getting to Bear Bachmeier, the coverage downfield too. I think they had great coverage, man. There was nowhere really for Bear Bachmeier to safely throw the ball. Even when he got the ball off, there was a couple times where they probably should have had an interception.
Yeah,
there was a few where they probably should have had a pick there against Bear Bachmeier. But I mean, man, just ultimately it comes down to just the inability to move the ball on offense. We saw it similarly when Texas Tech came here to Rice Eccles, and it very much played the same factor down there in Lubbock today against BYU.
Yeah, only 255 total yards of offense for the Cougs today, 368 for Texas Tech. So really, again, like, it's not like Texas Tech came in and dominated offensively, right?
Right.
If BYU would have been able to find something, they could have hung around in this game, and that's how good the defense was playing. But offensively, just nothing. Herm J chiming in on on Twitter. Appreciate the comments. He's saying BYU was exposed. Do the Utes jump BYU in the playoff rankings after today's BYU loss? Sounds like we got a Ute fan in the chat. And, that's an interesting question because, I mean, it was a blowout, frankly, today for BYU. They're definitely going to fall probably out of the top 10. I don't see Utah rising on a bye week. I don't see Utah jumping BYU just yet, especially because BYU won the head-to-head fairly recently. What are your thoughts there, Alex?
I think Alex Curie mentioned it this morning, man. Utah's maybe a little bit of the stop right now for as far as where the loser of this game was going to fall. I do think, and I do stick with the thought of, because Utah was on the bye, they probably will end up falling on the rankings, and so I think both of them.
You think they'll both fall?
I think they'll both end up falling with Tuesday's iteration of the college football playoff rankings.
I mean, there's still a lot of ball left to be played today, right?
Right.
Indiana did come back and get the win against Penn State. That would have been a crazy, crazy shock to the rankings.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll see what ends up happening. I don't know if Utah will fall too much, especially if some other top 10 teams lose. But
right.
I think BYU will definitely find themselves out of the top 10 today. And then you look at Tech, and they're going to be inside the top 5. I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, this was a really dominant performance today. And especially looking back at that Arizona State loss, I mean, it gets easier and easier to say, look, that's our only loss of the year, and that was with our backup quarterback. That's not the real us. Like, the real Texas Tech has showed up for all of their big-time games this season and frankly dominated.
Yep. Again, it goes down to that defense, man. That defense is the real deal. When in this day and age of college football, in this day and age of in the era of college football that we're in, it's very, very obvious how much resources have gone into that defense, because it's completely overhauled from where it was a season ago. I think they mentioned on the broadcast, man, last season they were averaging 39 points per game. This year, they're down 3 touchdowns from that score, from what they were giving up last season. And I think that obviously that plays a huge factor right there. We talked about it this morning. They are one of the top defenses in the entire country. Coming into this one at number 5, I'm sure we'll probably see them maybe go up a spot after this one. But Texas Tech, man, they put their money where their mouth is, and they they figured out their defense.
They really did, and it still feels weird to say, because traditionally Texas Tech has never had a good defense. So now you look at this team, and I mean, their offense is okay, right? But it's really their defense that's winning the game.
See, and I think that's the part that's probably going to sting the most for BYU fans after this game, is the fact that Baron Morton look, he can throw a ball deep, and I thought he did a great job of finding the busted coverage sometimes in BYU's defense and hitting those receivers and making big plays off of, the yaks. But in the red zone, he struggled, man. In the red zone, he struggled. And I think that's what's going to hurt BYU fans the most after this loss is the fact that Baron Morton did not look great after the big plays, right? He did not look great after the big plays, and BYU's defense wasn't able to turn the ball over. They weren't able to be opportunistic the way that we know this BYU defense can be. Yeah. They did great stopping them, absolutely, but there was times where there wasn't really big opportunities for BYU to take the ball away and give Bear Bachmeier short field, and maybe that, maybe if you take the ball away, give your offense the short field, maybe you're able to drive down, punch it in, get the touchdowns, right? But ultimately, that just opportunity was never able to present itself. I think for the most part, BYU's offense started at the 25 or behind.
Yeah, and they've done a great job all year, not just the defense, but the special teams as well at creating those takeaways. And today you got nothing in the takeaway column, and it's like, okay, that's fine. You can still win games doing that. You just have to not turn the ball over yourself, and then they turn it over twice.
You turn it over 3 times.
Yeah, 3, I guess, counting the punt from Kingston. And
yeah,
it was an interesting game, man. It was an interesting game. I'm not necessarily surprised. I was hoping for a closer, more competitive game, but the reality is this is the best team that BYU has played all year. And I'm sorry to say that to Utah fans, but I think it's fair. I mean, Utah lost to this same team, right? This is frankly the best team that BYU has played in a long time. And they knew it coming in. They were not able to rise up to the challenge and to the occasion and hang quite yet. And again, mistakes all over offensively. Receivers didn't play great. Offensive line didn't play great. Quarterback didn't play great. Running backs didn't play great. I don't think anybody really offensively I would point to and say, oh, yeah, they had a good game today. I think really looking around that offensive group, I think everybody was pretty lackluster today.
It was. Ultimately, it was very lackluster. And I think, I want to give them a little bit of a I guess benefit of the doubt, because they did end up moving the ball nicely on that touchdown drive. But I mean, where was that the rest of the game, right? It was pretty obvious that the defense at that point knew that the game was in hand. They kind of backed off a little bit, gave a little bit more space underneath, specifically to those BYU wide receivers. But you look at that drive, it's a good drive. They move the ball down the field, they get the touchdown, but you take that away. And the reality is that there was just a big inability for BYU to move the ball down the field.
At all.
Yeah.
At all. And that's tough. I mean, we were talking earlier, like when you're running back, when LJ Martin is out, when he's injured, when he's banged up, when he's not 100% and able to contribute, you're going to have to go elsewhere to kind of replace that running game, replace that physicality. And today BYU was just unable to match that physicality at the line of scrimmage. And I think that bled through kind of into the secondary, man. I mean, there were a ton of plays where BYU's receivers got some hands on it, but so did Texas Tech's defenders and knocked it out or jarred it out with a hit or whatever. So, I mean, now you got to close the chapter, move on the next week and finish the season strong. You got 3 games left. The season is not over. I mean, we were talking after the Iowa State win, like BYU essentially has a mulligan, right? They can survive a loss this season. And I don't want this season to feel like a downer just because of this loss. And I don't think it should at all.
Right.
They have essentially a mulligan. Now you can't lose again. You cannot suffer a second loss over the last 3 weeks, but the last 3 games are very winnable for BYU. And if they do their job, if they do what they need to do, if they do what they can do, they'll find themselves in Arlington for the college, for the Big 12
with a rematch against this team.
If they do what they need to do, against this team, or Utah, or maybe Houston. I think they only have 1 loss. I'm not confident in them, but
no, Houston has the 2 now, and I think
is there
Cincinnati? 2? Cincinnati has the 1.
Okay, well, You never know how things are going to shake out, man. But essentially what I'm saying is BYU's destiny is still in their hands. They don't have to rely on tiebreakers for a path to the Big 12 championship. They don't have to rely on luck. They don't have to rely on other teams.
They don't have to rely on other teams, and I think that's massive, right? You
Yeah.
just have to go out there, obviously learn from this game, clean up the mistakes, and then move on, man. You got TCU coming into Provo next week. That's going to be a big challenge. We'll get into that, I'm sure, here later. But ultimately, I think the best news for BYU fans tonight is look, it's a tough loss. It's a hard one to swallow, I think I would say. But the best news is that you do still control your destiny. You still do control what the outcome will be for your season. And it's going to be really important not to let this Texas Tech team beat you twice, man. We'll throw that cliche in there too.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Don't let them beat you twice. That is the ultimate cliche. But you're right. Let's take a break, and then we will continue to break this thing down. We are live on YouTube, on Facebook, on X. Appreciate everybody tuning in, getting some tweets at me as well. We'll get into some of the fan reaction later on in the show. So if you have anything you want to say about this BYU loss, let us know. We've got a lot of Utah fans chiming in as well. So, if you have something to say, let us know. We'll get into it. But this is the Cougar Postgame Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
You're listening to the Cougar Postgame Show on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
The Cougar Postgame Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. I'm Christian Esparza. Alex Napoles joining me, breaking down BYU's 29-7 loss to Texas Tech on the road. Tough loss for the Cougs, Alex, but it is not season-ending. It is not a nail in the coffin for Big 12 championship hopes, for college football playoff hopes. And I want to emphasize that. Getting some reaction in the comment section. Riley O'Brien 7. I'm gutted about this one. I legitimately bought into the hype. I thought we were national championship bound after beating Utah. SMH next year is our year. It's tough to not feel like that after not encouraging performance on national TV, right? But as we just touched on at the end of last segment, Alex, Utah definitely can survive a loss and still achieve any goal that they had set this season, besides going undefeated, of course.
Right.
I don't know if at any point Utah or BYU were ever considered national title contenders. And I know that BYU was undefeated, right? But I don't think that any Big 12 team really is looked at that way. Maybe Texas Tech, but even then, I still feel like there's a huge gap between the top teams in the SEC and Big 10 and the top teams in the Big 12. And hopefully, as these teams continue to put resources into the programs like we saw this year with BYU and Texas Tech, hopefully that gap will continue to close. But even with how good Texas Tech is, I don't know if I would take them over an Ohio State or any of those teams, right?
No, and I still think that, right, I still think Texas Tech needs to, still has a little bit to prove, right? They still have to go out and they have to win that Big 12 championship game. Being able to beat a team twice, right? So you still have a potential chance at a rematch. You still have a potential swing at this Texas Tech team in that Big 12 championship game, right? So who's to say BYU can't go out, learn from their mistakes, and play a better ball game when it comes to the Big 12 championship game, right? I still think Texas Tech still has to go out and still has to prove that they can win this conference, something they've never done before we can have any conversation about a Big 12 team being a national contender.
Yeah, I think that's fair. There's a lot of work to do, and we are seeing some very encouraging football. And you know, it sucks to lose during the season, but then as we saw last year with Arizona State, like once your season is over, you almost cheer for the conference, right? In those playoffs. So especially if Tech ends up beating BYU twice, who knows? And I don't know what the scenario would look like if that means BYU doesn't make the playoff at that point, but yeah, then you hope that they can turn into kind of an underdog and put the conference on the map, and that will help. That will help everything long term as far as bringing, you know, prospects and talent into this conference. But to circle back to the point, I don't know if I ever would have considered BYU a national contender, even though they didn't have any losses coming into this game. Baby steps, right? You gotta contend to win your conference first, and then once you do that, then you can talk about them as a contender. But I do think BYU has some room to grow, and that's going to happen when you have a freshman quarterback.
There's a comment here by Smurfties. Not a surprise. BYU has had to find a way to win for a handful of their wins. So how couldn't a real team smack them today? To focus in on the first part, right? We hit it a lot this morning. The fact that BYU had to come back against Arizona, the fact that BYU had to come back against Iowa State, they had to come back against Colorado in that early season game. There's not a doubt in me, right, that this team can come back because we've seen it multiple times, right? We've seen BYU be able to claw their way back into games, take leads, and be able to hold on to those leads and be able to come back in good fashion, right? But it's the fact that Texas Tech defense is just that good. You weren't going to be able to afford to be able to find a way to win, quote unquote, right? You were going to have to go out there. You're going to have to come out strong, and obviously we didn't see BYU come out strong. Obviously we didn't see those early turnovers really gave some momentum to Texas Tech. I think BYU won a little bit back of that momentum, being able to hold them to just that field goal in that in that first quarter, or early in that first quarter, and then obviously they go down. They have a 92-yard drive to score the first touchdown of the game, and I think that kind of gives momentum back to Texas Tech, and they were able to hold on to that momentum. So there's no doubt in me that this BYU team can ultimately find ways to win, but this was one of those games where you felt if they went down early, it was going to be a struggle to come back.
And Kalani Sitake said as much himself following that Iowa State game. He basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, I don't remember the exact quote, but he was like, yeah, it's nice to know that we can win like this, but I don't want to have to do this. It's not sustainable. And we knew at some point they were going to run into a team where if that deficit comes, you're not getting back in the game. And we knew it was today. We knew that they couldn't do it against this Texas Tech football team. So
I think a lot of people had this one circled as the game that would happen if it was going to happen.
Yeah. And that's really what separates the good teams from the great ones, right? Great teams don't let the opponent back into the game. If you are a great football team and your opponent is making mistakes, they should never be in the football game. And that's the mentality that Texas Tech had today. And that's why the Red Raiders came out on top. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about how dominant Jack Kelly and Isaiah Glasker were. I think this was probably their best game of the season, maybe individually, but also as a duo. I think they were both making plays. Siale Acera also played really well. All three of them had a sack today on Baron Morton. And I think that is very encouraging, considering how banged up they both have been, speaking to Kelly and Glasker, obviously. But not only in blitzing and bringing down Baron Morton, but Jack Kelly was also showing up big time in pass coverage. He made a really good play down the boundary. I mean, he didn't get a hand on the football, but he was in a perfect position and didn't allow the wide receiver to come down with the ball. And then he had a really nice play in open space, knocking the ball down as well. So it's encouraging to see those two back and playing at a high level, because this team is going to go as far as those guys can take them. They are a phenomenal linebacker duo, and I know that Jacob Rodriguez is probably the best linebacker in the country, but I would say that BYU has the best linebacking unit in the country.
Yes, I agree with you for the most part about that duo taking them as far as they're going to take them, but I think obviously it's at the end of the day, it's an 11-man defense, right? And you're going to need help, and today they didn't have that help. A lot of missed tackles, it felt like, from the secondary. It felt like the secondary, there was a couple of plays where a couple of big runs from Dickey, a couple of big passing plays, whether it was to Virgil, whether it was to number 3, Koi Eakin. There was opportunities for a guy like Tanner Wall to come in and make a play, and ultimately there was some missed tackles there, and it led to even bigger plays, even bigger yards after carry. And so while I do agree that is probably the best linebacking duo in the country between Glasker and Kelly, and I thought today they did fantastic. What was it, 4 sacks ultimately for this BYU defense, 2 of them coming from Jack Kelly, one of them from Isaiah Glasker. That's fantastic. That's great. Yeah. That's great. You know, those two are definitely probably the best linebacking duo in this conference. However, ultimately it shows that it's not just going to come down to those two. It's not just going to come down to how great those two are. Obviously it leads to big red zone plays when that defense is helping out. But ultimately they're going to need help. And I think tonight the secondary was beat a little bit. There was a couple of big plays too from Baron Morton, where he was able to throw into some busted coverage.
This play is going to back up what you're saying, Alex. This stat, I mean, 6 Texas Tech Red Raiders, 6 different players had a play of over 20 or more yards. 6 different players were able to have a chunk play.
There you go.
On this BYU defense. And that's kind of been where BYU has struggled. I mean, down to down, they play relatively well. But then a few times a game, you know, there will be a missed tackle or a lapse in coverage where they give up a big play. And that's where teams are able to capitalize. And that's, I mean, you've got some injuries on the back end and guys, I mean, in and out of the lineup. Some guys have been, I mean, there were a couple that were injured to start the year and then made their way back into the lineup. And then part of it too is just it's going back to the linebackers, Jack Kelly and Isaiah Glasgow. It's nice to send them in blitzes and come away with sacks, but when you're not getting pressure or sacks from anybody else on your defensive line and you have to rely on sending blitzes, that hurts you in coverage, and that's going to point. That's going to point to that.
And we saw that today.
I don't think BYU's defensive line played very good today at all. I mean, there were a couple plays where they stonewalled the running back, but for the most part, felt like they were getting pushed around.
For the most part, yeah. And I think Cameron Dickey, again, coming up with 121 rushing yards, this team was able to run. It felt like for the most part, it felt like this team was able to run pretty well. You win back some of the yardage on sacks, right? Baron Morton ends with negative 47 yards because of the sack numbers, because of the being able to take him down to the backfield. But ultimately, I thought that, you take that away and that's almost 200 yards rushing. I think this team had just a little bit too much ease running the ball on that defensive line.
Yeah. And BYU didn't make it tough on them, and they were able to milk the clock. And interestingly enough, too, they were able to not only milk the clock, but then there were times too, like midway through the third quarter, their second drive of the second half, they went up tempo kind of out of nowhere. And I think that was kind of taking the dagger and twisting it a little bit, metaphorically, right? That really gassed BYU's defense, and that wears you down. And again, speaking to them kind of being worn down by the offense, not scoring points, and then you have to come on the field and the freaking other team's offense is going no huddle, and it's like, oh, this is the most frustrating day ever.
Yeah.
It's really, really tough when that happens. And this Tech offense today was efficient, and I think that's the best way to describe them. They were efficient, and I know they had the big plays, and that's where we kind of started off talking about this, but ultimately they were able to keep the ball out of BYU's hands.
I think the big plays is really what it comes down to, man, because you look at the numbers and I think, they hold Baron Morton to just 17 to 32. You get 5 pass deflections. There was moments where that BYU defense stepped up, but it was really just the couple of plays. It really was just a couple of times where they're able to break away for an explosive play. They're able to break away for a big play that ultimately makes the difference, because you were able to get the big play on the drive, but then ultimately you stall out in the red zone, and that really makes the difference. This could have been a blowout, even worse so than it was, right? It could have been bigger than what you see on the 29-7 scoreline. But ultimately, there are, I think, a lot of positives that you can take away from this defensive performance from BYU.
And I correct myself. Time of possession, BYU actually, it was even, but BYU technically led 30 minutes and 30 seconds to 29 minutes and 25 seconds. So that's interesting. Did it feel like today that it felt even? Because it didn't feel like that watching the game. That's just, BYU really struggled to move the ball, and that's why it doesn't feel like they had the ball a lot, but I guess they did.
That number kind of surprises me, because it does feel like Texas Tech had the ball for the majority of the game.
Yeah.
But I that might just be from, again, the inability to move the ball.
Getting some more reaction. Riley O'Brien 7 in the YouTube comments. I'm so sick and tired of this every year. I guaranteed all my Ute fan friends we'd win today, and now I don't even want to speak to anyone in real life. Human to human interaction. I'm ticked. Yeah, man, it's a tough loss. And it's when you've got a favorite team and they play the way BYU did today, it's not going to feel good, right? But the sun's going to come up tomorrow.
Exactly.
You're going to put it behind you, and guess what? Going into next week, BYU is still only going to have 1 loss on the year, and things are shaking out really well for the Cougs. And again, we've mentioned it a couple times. If BYU does what they need to do over the last final games, they're going to have a rematch against this Tech team in a few weeks. And
I think that's the most important thing, for fans like Riley O'Brien who are ticked and are sick about this loss. Absolutely, by all means, it's a rough loss. It's a tough one to swallow, but I know that Kalani Sitake and the guys recognize that the season is far from over. Yeah. You go back to last season, right? And I think the thing that really kind of put the dagger into BYU's hopes was the back-to-back losses, right? And so it's going to be so important and so vital for this team to not get caught up in that, not get caught up in 2 straight losses, not get caught up in this is a bad loss to Texas Tech, absolutely, but now you cannot afford to lose against TCU at home. Losing to TCU at home, that would be the bone killer, the backbreaker.
Losing to Texas Tech in Lubbock is not a bad loss by any means. I mean,
it's a top 10 team, man.
It's a
top 10
there's
team.
There's no shame in this loss for BYU. Now, as you're pointing to, if BYU loses at home to TCU, that's where you can start to, feel like not wanting to talk to anybody at work and feel like your Cougars blew it. But no, man, I mean, there's no shame in losing to this team. This is a really great football team that BYU played today. And I know that they have one loss on the year. Again, you got to remember that loss was with their backup quarterback. That wasn't a full-strength Texas Tech team that lost to Arizona State. So when Texas Tech has been playing at full strength, they have not lost a game this year. And they're just a buzzsaw, man. They're a wagon. They are a wagon.
Absolutely. And, you go back to the other games, and I think what you saw from that offense, even against like Iowa State when you're down, even in that comeback win against Arizona, that I feel like that's the offense you've come to be used to from BYU. And so there's no doubt in my mind that you'll be able to bounce back from this. You'll be able to bounce back and find some sort of semblance, find some sort of rhythm to where you were in those previous games compared to your inability to move the ball in this one. Again, I think it just goes to massive. It's a massive credit to Texas Tech and what they're able to do defensively.
Real quick before we get to another break, want to get into some more reaction. Getting tweets. Utes for life chiming in at Esparza Sports. Now you know how Utah fans feel. Multiple times in red zone could have kicked field goals. Hey man, I do know. Look, I've been doing the Utah postgame all year. Yeah, we've been tuning in to every Utah game. So yeah, I get it, and that is a frustrating way to lose, feeling like you leave points on the board. So I do know how Utah fans feel. Yeah, I've been tuned in all year.
Yep, we've been here.
We've been here, man, and shout out to everybody along for the ride with us. Kalani Sitake has wrapped up at the podium. We've got the sound. We are going to get to that next. But first, we got to take a quick break for radio purposes. So stick with us. It's the Cougar Postgame Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
listening to the Cougar Postgame Show on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
To Cougar Postgame Show 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Join us as we break down BYU's loss 29-27 to Texas Tech on the road in Lubbock. Alex, it was a tough one for the Cougs today. Couldn't do much of anything offensively. Defensively, the defense did a really good job of keeping Texas Tech from, I guess, blowing the game out until the fourth quarter. That's when it truly felt like, okay, this is insurmountable. But it felt like for a majority of the game, it was within reach for the Cougs, but we kind of knew in the back of our minds that the comeback wasn't in the works. Yeah,
I think I want to say it was that late touchdown from no, even before that, maybe a little bit. I'll give it the fourth quarter touchdown. I think that after that fourth quarter touchdown, right, they go up 26-0, and it just felt like the comeback that you typically see from this BYU team, their ability to come back and get back into games. It felt like after that touchdown, it was over for BYU.
Again, like I had said this morning, like if BYU goes down 2 scores at any point, especially early on, they're not coming back. But I think for me, it felt real when they still had 0 at the end of the third. That's when I was like, okay, let's just get to the postgame show. Like, this thing ain't happening, man. But I think maybe even earlier than that, because frankly, and maybe it was the Rodriguez interception too that turned the tide. I turned to my wife. I said, "Oh, it's over." Yeah, that was like midway through the third quarter.
And again, man, it just goes back to that inability to really get anything going on offense. Even when the defense held and BYU would get the ball back, and you have to drive down the field to get something going. It just never really felt like that confidence was there for BYU to move the ball down the field, because they weren't able to do so today. Yeah, they weren't, and again, that Cougar team that you've come to know that finds a way to win just wasn't able to. They weren't able to get it going, mostly because the Bear Bachmeier, again, he looked rattled, man. He looked like a true freshman quarterback. He had happy feet in the pocket. It looked like he was rushing to make decisions. He was putting the ball in scary situations at times, and ultimately, right, it's Jacob Rodriguez gets the tip, he gets the interception, and it's just the inability for BYU to get anything going on offense.
Yeah, and again with those comeback wins, man, it's nice to pull them out, and it's not, but you can't rely on that.
But in those wins, right, Bear Bachmeier is throwing the ball down the field. They're getting plays. They're moving the ball. They're staying ahead of the chains. They're getting things going. They're being efficient on offense.
Yeah,
and
there were signs. Signs.
Right. Tonight, there wasn't those signs. There wasn't that feeling that they were going to be able to get back into it.
Yeah. Let's throw it down to the podium. Kalani Sitake has wrapped. We have the audio courtesy of Mitch Harper, our KSL Sports BYU insider. So can only play a couple minutes because of broadcast guidelines. But let's throw it down to the podium and hear what head coach Kalani Sitake had to say.
Congratulations to Texas Tech. I thought Coach McGuire had his guys ready to play, and they did a good job holding us off and when we're trying to make a run and trying to get the momentum switch. We weren't able to do that, but I'm proud of the guys. The guys played hard. We just didn't do enough against a really good team. I mean, there's a really good team at home, and they found a way to play better than we did, but this is going to be a great experience for us to learn from, and we look forward to getting better from now until next week when we end up at home and against TCU. But you have to give them a lot of credit. I thought TCU did a good job and possessed the ball, and made some big plays, especially looking at the big plays that happened on defense. Defensively, we're doing a pretty good job. So big plays we gave up, a couple passes and a run and a muff punt cost us, I think, 13 points, and so even with that, thought we were able to, we were going to respond and come back and make it a game in the second half, and we weren't able to do that because of what Texas Tech was able to do. I mean, they have a really good team, and one of the best teams in the country, and this was a good experience for us to go through, and we'll learn from this, and we'll be a better team from it, and make sure that we get better next week and perform better. But it's my job as a head coach to make sure that we're playing at our best. I don't want to say that we didn't play at our best. I just said that Texas Tech made things difficult. A really good team, well coached, and a lot of great players. But we will be back, and we'll find a way to improve and find a way to play better next week. So what questions do you guys have for me? What was that? Yeah, they're one of the best defenses in the country, and we knew it'd be tough sledding, but they got us behind the chains a little bit, and and weren't able to take advantage. I mean, they're really good at taking advantage of third downs, and we weren't able to do it. And then on the other side, we gave up too many big plays on third down. And, the first half it was back and forth a little bit, but we gave up 13 points, had a good stop at the end of the half there, and thought we were able to get some momentum. We even started by forcing a punt in the second half, and just weren't able to get the momentum swinging our way. Weren't able to get things going on offense, and that was a struggle. And then special teams wasn't really an advantage for us. I thought they executed their plan, did a great job. And did a great job getting the victory. Congratulations to them. I thought their fans were awesome, were good advantage, and made a lot of noise and made things difficult. But it's all the stuff that we expected. It just didn't work out in our favor. My job as head coach is find out how we can get better from this and make sure that I get the team ready next time. But obviously the players work hard. I just got to get them ready and make sure that we perform next time.
There you go. That's what we can play from Kalani Sitake's post-game presser. Obviously giving a lot of credit to Texas Tech. Like, he knows that this is a very good football program this season. Yeah. They are a top 10 team for a reason. They came out and they were a better team today. And I don't think there would be any argument that, honestly, BYU hurt themselves more today than I guess you could say than Texas Tech won the game. I think if BYU wouldn't have made as many mistakes as they did, this game would have been a lot closer. And then I guess you could point to BYU made those mistakes because Texas Tech was so good, but Tech didn't shank the punt off of Vanderhaar's leg. Tech didn't make Parker Kingston drop the punt. And I think those two plays really turned the tide of the game. Tech gets a short field on their first drive, and then BYU punts, gets the ball again, but they get another short field because Kingston drops the ball. So they go up 10-0 really quick without too much effort.
Obviously, you get the early momentum there for Tech, and that's kind of they got that momentum, and they kind of held on to it for the rest of the game. I don't think that this loss is in any way, shape, or form an indication or an indictment on the level of skill of that BYU has. I still think, again, that they're a very good, a really, really good team, and we've seen what they're able to do when they're effectively moving, throwing the ball down the field, where they're effectively running the ball with LJ Martin. It's a very good offense, man. And I think more so, like Kalani Sitake said, it's more so what Texas Tech was able to do. It's more so what Texas Tech did and being able to stop their offense and being able to make big plays on defense and of course make some big plays down the field on their offensive side of the ball. I think this is more so of Texas Tech having a more efficient offense today, and BYU making some early mistakes that really shot themselves in the foot.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. This is still a BYU team that was undefeated coming into this game. They were ranked top 10. I don't think either of those things are going to be true Tuesday, right? But BYU has 3 games remaining on the schedule. Again, got to keep hammering this home. The world is not ending. Cougar fans, take a deep breath. Your college football playoff hopes are still alive. Your Big 12 championship hopes are still alive. You've got to win your 3 games left. You got TCU coming into Provo next week, another night game. That should be a win for the Cougs. Then you got to go on the road to Cincinnati. That could be a tough game. And then you finish up the year at home against UCF. So 3 very winnable games. I think BYU will be favored in all 3 of those games, as they should be. And if they take care of business, I mean, you finish the season with 1 loss. Are you serious? I think any Cougar fan would have taken that at the beginning of this year. And remember, Alex, after I think it was our West Virginia post-game show, BYU kind of grinded out an ugly win. And a lot of the fans in the comment sections were like melting down. They're like, "Oh, we're losing 4. We're not even going to be." Some people were saying they weren't going to be bowl eligible after that West Virginia win. Like,
I do remember that.
And that was just like a month ago. And so to still be in a really good spot, I mean, your one loss on the season so far has come to a really dang good football team. There's no shame in that. And for everybody feeling like they don't even want to go to work tomorrow because they're getting teased by all their Utah fans, just say, hey, you guys lost to them too. It's that easy. And guess what? BYU beat Utah. That's all you got to say. Those two things. I'm helping you out. Get a notebook and write it down.
I think Kalani said it best, man. I think Coach Sataki said it best. They're a really good football team, but now it's time to put this one behind you. It's his job as a head coach to get them to learn from the mistakes, clean it up, and then get them ready for TCU, man. Because from here on out for BYU, you're on very thin ice. You're not allowed to afford to lose another game, right? Mm-hmm. Kiri said it this morning. You have a little bit of a mulligan because you are undefeated. No one else was at this point in Big 12 play. And so now that you have that loss, your room for error has gone down significantly. You're not able to make as many errors. You're on thin ice. You have to go out. You have to beat TCU. You have to bounce back, get a big win, and then you have to go on the road to a Cincinnati team who I'm sure Cincinnati, of course, with their one loss in conference, are still hopeful that they have a shot at a Big 12 championship game. And so you have two really, really important games. You have two really, really big games coming up. So it's going to be super important for you to, as you know, for the BYU players to not get caught up in this loss and to understand that the better team beat you today, but what can you learn from this game? Again, there's a lot of positives on defense that I think you can take away from this game, and move on to that to next week at home against TCU, where now you're in must-win situations, right? BYU is going to enter that TCU game in a must-win situation. BYU is going to go on to the road to Cincinnati in a must-win situation, and then from there, we'll see how the conference and how the standings shake out. But you're still in a prime position to make it to Arlington.
Yeah, dude, and I'm gonna go with the holistic approach, man. Maybe this is a good time for BYU to pick up a loss. I mean, they can survive it, right? And maybe it's a good thing to kind of reignite that fire and say, you know what, we don't want this season to end the way that last season did, with our conference championship hopes pulled out from under us because we lost 2 games that we shouldn't have lost. So maybe it's going to be a good thing to pick up this loss and put everybody in the right headspace and say, we've got some work to do. It's not going to come easy. And, when you've got that 0 next to your name, the 0 losses, it's easy to get full of yourself, man. And I'm not trying to say that's exactly what happened to BYU. I don't know what's going on inside the locker room, but it's hard to shut out all the noise. It really is, especially in this day and age with everybody being on social media. They hear everything, man. So to pick up that loss, hopefully this Cougar team can use it as motivation over this final 3-game stretch.
Absolutely. And again, right, you bounce back, you go get a win against TCU. There are 3 teams now at the top of the conference with just the 1 loss, right? You have the Texas Tech loss to Arizona State. You have BYU, who just lost to Texas Tech. Then you have Cincinnati, who lost to Utah. Those 3 teams, they're still gunning, man. They're still playing for to make it to Arlington. And so, right, it's far from over. It's a good thing. You're absolutely right, Christian. It might be a good thing to take this loss now. You learn from those mistakes, and then you carry some better momentum, right, heading into TCU. You get that win. You head to Cincinnati. You knock them off, and then from there, the championship game might be decided, where you have a rematch and you have a chance in a swing at this Texas Tech team again.
Any closing thoughts here, Alex? I don't know. I mean, defensive player of the game, I think, is pretty easy. It's got to be Jack Kelly. He was all over. I don't know.
By far.
Is it worth trying to think of an offensive player of the game? I wouldn't think so.
Maybe not.
Is that too harsh?
Maybe not for this one. I mean, we could probably give it to Chase Roberts for the touchdown. But
sure.
Again, like, there's not much things that stood out on offense to me that I think deserves or earned a quote unquote MVP today. Yeah. But there was a lot of positives on defense, one being Jack Kelly. And so I think he did more than enough today to earn a defensive MVP. Jack Kelly, he's amazing, man. He's a big reason, I think, as to why Texas Tech sold out in the red zone as much as they did today. And yeah, we'll give it to Jack Kelly for having a great individual performance, but offensively, there's just not a standout performance to me on the offensive side of the ball.
Work hard and talk to us next week, and hopefully we will have several players to choose from.
There you go.
Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We've got one last comment. Let's see. No.
Yeah,
not even worth getting to. No. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Moving on.
BYU and Utah fans alike. Be sure to catch us on Saturday mornings for College Football Saturday. Next week we'll be back to the normal schedule, 10 and noon. And then, we will have the post-game shows for BYU and Utah next week, back to the normal schedule. And, of course, the KSL Sports Zone having all the best coverage throughout the week, starting basically at 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. DJ and PK all the way to JJ and Alex. And then Mitch Harper going to have some great write-ups on KSLSports.com. Shout out to everybody involved with helping us out today. Again, shout out to Mitch. Shout out to Alma producing. Thank you to Alex for sticking around with me. And then, again, thanks to everybody for listening. So for Alex, for Alma, I'm Christian. This is your Cougar postgame show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.